Test, test.
Forgot to push my buttons. Welcome everybody to our February 3rd Board of Supervisor meeting. Hope you all had a great weekend. I've asked Supervisor David to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible.
All right, we'll get started here. Can we get a motion to approve our minutes and
Chairman Mack, I've read them over and I see them to be in order. I make a motion to approve their meeting minutes.
And I'll second that motion.
all in favor say aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you. Can we get a motion to approve our demands and handwritten warrants?
So moved.
And I'll second that.
All in favor say aye.
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 Motion passes. We'll now turn the time over to Sheriff P.J. Allred.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning.
Morning.
This is a good agenda item here today. And what we're here is we're asking for an approval to accept local border support funding related to the SB 1720 in the amount of $480,000. So instead of asking if you'll give it to us, we're asking if we can accept this one. So, and like I said, it's for border support funding, but we can use it for vehicles and different things like that, which greatly helps us a lot. Anyway, it's pretty simple. We can use it.
Great.
So that money, Sheriff, you could use it for a variety of things. There's not a lot of earmark on it, is there?
Not a lot, as long as we can kind of show it as border related.
Sure.
Yeah, that's why one of the reasons why we do use it for when we have for vehicles is because of the amount and the cost of a vehicle to get it up and running and get it into the fleet. You know.
Absolutely.
Just if I might, Mr. Chairman, and Sheriff, and you're right, Sheriff, it can be used for a lot of things, but we did have to get specific approval for what we intend to use it for, which is 4 patrol vehicles for the Sheriff's Office, some outfitting and tracks equipment to go with it, and that's for Graham County. And then they also asked that we set aside some money for the other local agencies. So in there is also some license plate readers for the flock equipment that we've been installing for Safford, and also some flock and license plate reader equipment for Thatcher, and then a couple grappler units for town of Pima. So it's mainly 4 patrol vehicles for Graham County with all the outfitting that goes with it and computers and everything, and then flock systems for Safford, Thatcher, and grapplers for Pima. Just to be specific, you're right, Sheriff. It can be used for a lot of things, but we had to specifically say what it's used for.
That's great. I'm glad to see you helping other entities as well. So it's a good deal. Thank you.
Yeah. Supervisor David?
I just, it's tremendous. Under Sheriff McCormick's, I know he does a lot of the grant writing, and that's what a benefit for us. And the only comment on the grapplers for 2 of them for Pima is it's supposed to help or supposed to minimize the or at least fix high-speed pursuits. But if it's, as I understand, the grappler, you got to go up and catch them and bump into them before you can apply the grappler. So you got to chase them down first to make it work.
Well, you know, for the most part, I mean, we don't have a whole lot of problem in actually chasing them down. We can get on them pretty good, but it's just what happens after that and what techniques you use and all this. And the grappler is just another tool that if we can deploy it and stop something horrible from happening, you know. And another reason, you know, we have them, you know, Pima, they're getting a couple, like say, and you know, the outside agencies, which we're the biggest outside agency, but hopefully we can get somebody shut down before they even get into Pima or coming into the interior of Safford, Thatcher, and all that stuff. You know, that's kind of the goal, is get these guys shut down, because it's pursuits inside of town they're dangerous everywhere, but they're so dangerous inside of town, and you know, and it's a what do you do kind of thing, you know. So luckily we have sergeants on, command staff on, senior officers on, deputies on, that can help make a call as far as how safe it is going to be coming through. You know, one of the things our guys will do, like in a pursuit, just for your kind of knowledge or whatever, is, and we've done this for 35 years. I mean, so a pursuit comes into town, officers out ahead of it will try to get into the intersections and open up the intersections, just like you're doing a traffic control for like the funeral going through, or a wide load going through, or whoever, to try to get those folks through our town and through our valley, where we can try to take care of them mainly on like an open highway and not a congested area.
Mm-hmm.
But then, you know, it kind of, every one of them's different though, and it kind of dictates the different things.
Well, I'll be interested to follow that and see how that is a success. Also, I'd just note a word to the wise: 2 of those 4 vehicles are going to be unmarked from reading the packet. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you,
That-
Sheriff. We appreciate you and
Yeah.
the great men and women that you have taking care of us. We appreciate
you.
you guys. Can we
Appreciate
get a
that.
motion?
Make a motion to approve and accept the local board support funding for the amount of $480,000.
I'm pleased to go ahead and second this motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Sheriff. We
Thank you, gentlemen.
appreciate it.
Appreciate it.
And I'll turn the time over to our County Attorney, Scott Bennett.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you for letting me take a few minutes to, make this request. This isn't completely new. We actually discussed it in our budget hearing when we did our budget this last go-around, and this is something that we've done in the past. Ultimately, what we're seeking to do is just finalize approval to send 3 of our employees to the prosecutor by Carpel training that will take place in St. Louis. PBK, which stands for Prosecutor by Carpel, is our case management system that allows us basically to run our office. Not only does it keep track of our cases, it's every file is now stored electronically. It's how we communicate with officers to a degree. We send out subpoenas. Basically, it runs the entire office. It's a really, really fine tool that several years ago we received a grant for, and that's how we funded it. However, we're always trying to improve and make better use of it. And annually, they do have this training that we send people to. We're dividing up, we're trying to be as effective as we can with this training, and each one of the 3 representatives we're requesting to send from our office will kind of take a different track. So in other words, they won't be in the same classes. They'll each be learning a different aspect of the case management system, and then hopefully bring that back to us and teach the rest of us how to use it. Ideally, it would be great if, like Greenlee County, we could send everybody, but from a financial perspective, we just don't believe that that's the best use of our resources, and we're sending what I think is probably the bare minimum to make the best use of the programming. So anyway, that's our request. We'd like to send Rob Standich, Heather Jacobs, and Destiny Taylor. That's 1 attorney, our office manager, and also 1 victim advocate, to do the various tracks and hopefully get trained and come back and bring all that information to us. The cost would go to airfare, incidentals getting to and from the airport, their food, the registration. It's not a free training, unfortunately. There is a tuition involved, and then also their lodging. So that's basically where we're at. We put in your packet estimates for airfare. I went a little high. I'm hoping that we can find more affordable airfare. One thing we are considering is trying to maybe pay a little more for airline tickets and get direct flights, which would hopefully avoid having to get lodging the day before and then the day after travel. So if we do spend a little more, it will be, the end result will be saving money by not having to get additional nights in a hotel. So that's what we got, and hopefully you'll approve this out-of-state travel.
Awesome. Thank you, Scott.
Chairman Mack, this has been planned for and budgeted for by the county attorney's office, and I'd make, unless there's more discussion or comments, I'd make a motion that we go ahead and approve the out-of-state travel for 3 of our employees.
I will second that.
Great. All in favor, say aye.
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 Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. We
Thank you so
appreciate
much.
you. All right. Now I'll turn the time over to our treasurer, Cindy Orr.
Good morning, gentlemen.
Good
I
morning.
feel a little like a broken record as these offers trickle in. But I'm presenting an offer for an over-the-counter tax deed for parcel 106-26158, and this offer does meet the minimum required to cover the taxes and fees and interest that have accrued.
If it helps us collect money, we like the broken record.
Thank you.
We want the whole album.
Any questions, concerns?
I'll make a motion to, if there's no other comments, I'll make a motion to approve the over-the-counter tax deed sale for parcel number 106-26-158.
And I'll second Supervisor Howard's motion.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes.
Thank
Thank you, Cindy. And I'll turn the time over to Brian Douglas from the Health Department.
Good morning, everyone. We're seeking approval to ratify an amendment to the existing agreement between the Detention Medical Unit and Dr. Lawrence Schiff. We'd like to strengthen our depth with our backup medical providers. Currently, Dr. Schiff is our contracted mental health provider. In addition, he is a medical doctor, and he's agreed to assist as a backup medical provider via telehealth. And also currently, he's the medical director, medical provider for, I'd say, at least 5 or 6 other detention centers throughout Arizona. And Dr. Schiff is offering this service at no additional cost to his existing contract. So he's, and this is something that will occur just very rarely. And we are asking for a ratification of the agreement because our current medical providers were on vacation simultaneously last week, and we needed his help.
It's kind of a backup to the backup.
A backup to the backup, and it
Yeah.
rarely happens, but it finally happened.
Great for him to volunteer to do that free of charge.
For free of charge, yes.
Yeah. Board, questions?
No, we're just
concerns?
ratifying something that's already in place, so.
Yeah, and it speaks really highly, Brian, of the relationship that you have with the physicians and medical staff, that they'd be willing to reach out and say, hey, I can do this. It's not a, it's not a problem, and that's impressive.
We're very lucky. We have some great providers that are just willing to just step up and help out.
Get a motion?
I'll make a motion to ratify an amendment to the existing agreement between Detention Medical Unit and Dr. Lawrence Schiff.
I'll second Supervisor Howard's motion.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate you. Now turn the time over to our Planning and Zoning Director, Steve McGoy.
Good morning, gentlemen. I have here an approval, asking you to approve a special event liquor license for fundraising a Mardi Gras party for the Gila Valley Samaritan Home at the Veterans of Foreign War Hall Post 10385 on March 2nd. Before we get any deeper, my application, and I just noticed this, my application says this is Saturday 3/2. But 3/2 is a Sunday, so we have time to redo this if we need to, or if we can amend it here and give them an approval, assuming we know what they meant. But I think we probably ought to bring this back if somebody wants to. Okay, legal legal is saying, shaking their head, yes, we should bring this back.
And will there be sufficient time for the Department of Liquor License Control to process
Yeah,
that?
we very seldom get one this far ahead.
Okay.
All right.
Well, we'll just give you the green light and say, bring it back, and we're inclined to,
Yeah.
to support that.
Thank you, Steve. All right. Next, we turn the time over to Dustin Welker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This item is a request for unbudgeted capital equipment in SBETA. I know we see that acronym a lot. It stands for Subscription-Based Information Technology Arrangement. You can probably guess that's an IRS acronym there, but that's the way we have to account for these subscriptions as capital items. For additional security cameras and doors, as you're well aware, back in the fall, we had to do a big project with Verkada to redo our cameras and doors due to some antiquated software, and we did a big project that wasn't exactly planned for out of necessity and almost emergency. And our IT staff did a great job working with every department in the entire county getting this done. This additional one is one that we missed along the way. We had a lot of piecemeal security systems throughout the county, which is one main reason we went with Verkada to put the entire county on one system, which has been very successful and very, very helpful. We just happened to miss this one that was on Valley Security, and we've canceled our Valley Security subscription wherever they were throughout the county, and just missed this one facility. So we need to pick up this other facility and put some cameras and doors on it. And the quote that we have for Verkada is not to exceed $20,000, and that amount, of course, triggers board approval because it's a capital project over $5,000.
Thank you. I just want to thank IT. They did a great job of getting us switched over on those. We appreciate that. Any questions or concerns from the board?
I think it's just cleaning up a much needed improvement that we had here in the county. Much appreciated.
I did have a question, and that is, as we grow and move things internally, as we do from time to time, is this contract site specific, or could this camera be moved to another location, and with the only expense being the door and the cabling?
Thank you, Supervisor David, and that's a good question, and I'll look to Allison and McCoy to make sure I don't say it wrong, but it can be moved wherever we need it to be moved, so it's not site specific.
Okay.
And when we pay for it, it is a 10-year warranty, 10-year warranty on all the equipment that we've done. So yeah, we can move it around and do what we want with them.
Sure. Thank you. I'll go ahead and move then that we approve unbudgeted capital for the equipment and the labor to install an additional security camera with the Verkada system.
I will second that.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. Thank you, Mr. Welker. We will now close our regular meeting and go into a jail district board meeting, and I will turn the time over to Julie.
To stand up, turn around, and come back as the jail board. But as you know, a few weeks ago, after our last board meeting, we had a work session with Wildan Financial Services to discuss the potential possibility to refund our jail district bonds with the hopes of being able to save money on our yearly debt service payments. And we are still not at the point where we're asking for your approval to do that, but what we are looking for is your approval for Wildan as our municipal advisor to proceed with the process of recommending bond refunding parameters, which is basically the board's decision of when we would go or no go as far as refunding, and it would obviously be based on whether financially it made sense to us. and also to establish a financing team. There's a lot of pre-work that needs to go in to get all of this stuff ready so that at the drop of a hat, we're ready to go. But we also discussed the fact that we don't have to pay for any of these services with the exception of a bond rating agency like Standard & Poor's to do our bond rating. But other than that, we don't have to pay for anything unless we actually go through with the refunding. And there's just so much uncertainty that we really need to get everything lined up so that if we're going to go, we're ready to go when it's appropriate. So I am seeking your approval for the county municipal advisor to proceed with the process of recommending bond refunding parameters and establishing a financing team.
Great, thank you. Any questions, concerns?
I just thank you, Julie, for your hard work on this and your efficiency on it. You're always on top of things for us, and I really, really appreciate that.
I would add, Mr. Chairman, for the casual listener or attendee to this meeting, the concern about us going out rebonding and putting the county in more debt is the exact opposite of what this is doing. What it is that we have a small surplus of funds, and we would actually use some of those funds to pay down on our obligation, which would save us possibly hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in interest payments. And that's the direction that we're going. There is a small initial cost anytime that you go through the bonding process, even with an adjustment like this. But the benefit to the county is going to be great, and this is a good time to do it. So that's our intent. So I am in favor of this.
Thank you, Chairman David. Can we get a motion?
Make a motion to approve the county municipal advisor to proceed with the process of recommending bond refunding parameters and establishing a financing team.
And I'll second Supervisor Howard's motion.
All in favor, say aye.
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 All right, so,
Did you say aye?
Yeah.
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you,
very
Julie.
much, Julie, and Brandon, and crew.
Okay, we'll now close our jail district board meeting and go back into our regular meeting.
Did we need a call to the public when we have a hearing or a board meeting? Procedurally, I just didn't know if we needed a chance for public input on all of our hearings.
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor David, just for the jail district, we certainly could. It's not required.
Okay.
But if you want us to put that on there in the future, we certainly can do that.
Well, if there were any comments, I don't know that there would be today.
We can add that on there in the
It's
future
up-
when
up
we
to the-
convene
up
as
to
a
the
jail
board.
district.
Okay.
To have a public hearing now?
No.
Oh, in the
No,
future.
but in the future, just to add call to the public.
Call to the public.
Or allow public comments in a,
If it's beneficial, I mean, it's not a big deal.
Okay.
I don't think.
because we can catch them and call to the public.
Sure.
Which is coming up in the
Right.
next agenda item.
Sure.
Okay, it just wouldn't be necessarily timely before we were to, have an action item. It would be post a decision.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
I would appreciate that if it's
Sure.
not procedurally too difficult.
No, it's not.
Great, thank you, Vice Chairman David. So we'll go back into our regular meeting now and use this time for the Board of Supervisors and County Manager just to give a brief summary of what's been going on the last 2 weeks. And we'll turn the time over to Manager Welker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I'd like to provide an update on projects. We have a lot of projects going on. One of them is our evidence freezer and cooler project over at the jail. We had a little bit of an issue getting the prefabricated walls and ceilings for that, but those are supposed to come in on February 10th. So we should be looking at that project starting next week or the week after. The Gila River fire breaks. So this has been about a 4-year project. If you all remember when Bill Brandow first came to the board, and he had been dreaming this up for the last 20 years and committed the Board of Supervisors to going forward with this. It's been 100% funded through Department of Forestry over at the state level, and as of last week, we finished this project and closed it out. We turned in our final report, our final reimbursement, and the 22 fire breaks in the river, of course, have been done for a few months, and we've been treating them and continue to work on a plan to maintain those fire breaks. And just as a reminder, those fire breaks are there to provide protection for the infrastructure, the bridges, the utilities, personal property that is along the river and in the riverbed. And the goal is that with these fire breaks, we're not risking our fire department's well-being, and they're able to basically backburn on one fire break as it comes from the other, or both fire breaks, have the fire go to the middle, but basically let them burn without have them get it into the river, which is always dangerous. So it's a great plan. Our biggest challenge going forward is maintaining them. We are working with GWP, the Gila Watershed Partnership. Sarah Sells reached out to me last week. They are applying for another grant. I have turned this project over now to Brian and Colin. This fits nicely in our emergency management department, so Colin Fanning will be managing these fire breaks going forward, and we'll be working with GWP and the local fire districts to keep these maintained and operating. Emergency management, Supervisor David had requested an update for that, and we will have a work session at our next board meeting to discuss our alert system and our emergency management process. Redoing the concrete floor in the Common Sense building was another one of our budgeted projects. We bid that out. Lunk Construction is the contractor. We're able to get that project well under budget, and he will start this week and next week on that project. Rebuilding the burned down shade structure at the fairgrounds and repurposing it as a shade structure in our maintenance department is another big project that is currently out to bid. That one will be a closed bid. We'll open it in the first meeting in March, and today is a mandatory meeting this afternoon that we're having out at the fairgrounds. Our Parks Department did a great job of doing a lot of the pre-work for the Field 3 lights, taking down those old halogen lights and putting up some LEDs. All the conduit has been installed and the field's re-leveled, and we are also out to bid on that one, and those bids are due February 27th. Building some concrete aprons over at the transfer stations has also been a project on the list. We're currently out to bid on those. Those are due on February 13th. We're working on a Graham County housing study through SEGO. Mr. Bill Osborne is here today with us today, and we'll talk later about CDBG, but this is a different department and a different project, but SEGO has secured funding for this. They've engaged all the local governments and agencies. We had our first kickoff meeting for the steering committee. I was very happy and impressed how many real estate brokers and developers and other representatives throughout the county. There's well over 30 people on that initial meeting. This study will be great. This will be a basis to hopefully give us some firm data and backup when we're seeking anything to do with housing and bringing necessary housing into the community, whether it be for-profit, nonprofit, low income, or whatever it may be. The study will give us some good data on all that. Perhaps our largest project, McCoy's here if you have any questions for that, was our data storage replacement project that was budgeted for $500,000. And the contractor was here on site last week, did all of the physical installation, and now they're just working on some remote configurations to finish up that very large project. I just want to thank McCoy and his staff for having a pretty seamless, none of us even knew that was happening last week, and we didn't have any disruptions throughout the county, so we appreciate that. The Motorola upgrade too, it feels like this keeps limping along, but it's getting very close. I just want to thank our maintenance department, Matt Hart and Mike Ledensky. They did some work over at the Ashurst Tower site to run some conduit across that bridge that the board approved not too long ago to finish up that connection, and that we're still waiting on some stuff with GovNet and Ashurst to completely wrap that project up. And we've, just so you know, we've been working very closely with all the other agencies to make sure everyone has their digital radios and are ready to go. Once we do go live, 100% live with that, there are still some, I think, fire districts and a few agencies that are missing some of those, not missing, they're waiting, still waiting on Motorola to get those radios. So we're trying to push the go button when everyone's ready. This has been such a huge project and so much coordination from McCoy and his team, and can't say enough about Jeff McCormie's and Sheriff Allred and for their relationships with all the other agencies, making sure everyone's ready to go on this. And everyone, of course, relies heavily on our dispatch, and we just really want to make sure this is seamless. Just a couple other things at the fairgrounds. Trey and his guys are working on the concession stand, doing a little remodel in there, getting it up to the health department standards. Health department's been great working with us on that. We're taking this time, as we've put in that conduit on field 3, we're going across our other soccer fields and baseball fields, ripping and leveling them right now, getting ready for grass season, which is great. Another thing we budgeted for is to systematically go through and replace a lot of our picnic tables that are mainly concrete and very old, and Trey has been spearheading that project and taking care of a lot of those. Just a few more. The highway department has their Solomon Road pavement project bid out. That'll open up the first meeting in March. That's the big project right there by just north of Tri-County to try to fix that rough part of the road. Engineering is still is working on the Tally Wash with Ethos Engineering. They're at 30% plans with those. That's that appropriation that we received from the state. They're working on designing the parking lots over at the fairgrounds, and they've had a huge focus on Power Line Road, which we'll talk more about in our work session. But trying to get all those right-of-ways has been a major project. They've done an excellent job, and unless things have changed, we still are lacking 2 of those, which we'll discuss later. So sorry for the lengthy report. That's my report for now, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Supervisor Howard?
Yeah, I'll be real brief. I won't bore you with a lot of stuff I've been doing, but I would just like to make a comment. We have legislators in session right now, and there's my passion, of course, you all know, is the water, and there's some bills of interest coming down through the state that I'm very interested in, and I plan on being on top of it and to inform the constituents of Graham County the urgency and the issues that's coming down from the state, and I want to be a voice for us and be interested on that. Also, I just want to give a shout out to the county and other entities of how good we work together and how we support each other. It's very important that we keep these relationships up between the entities, Pima, Thatcher, Safford County. We're all in this together, and I've seen such a great relationship built over the last few years, and I'm just proud of it, and I could be a part of it. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you.
Vice Chairman?
Mr. Chairman, I'd start off first with a point of executive privilege and acknowledging our Assistant City Manager for the City of Safford, Eric Majorano, who's here with us. And you're always welcome to our meetings. A couple of activities over the last couple of weeks. There was we had a pre-count meeting for the local committee to end homelessness. Also, there was a meeting of people who were concerned about the empowerment scholarships and impacts on public schools that I attended at the chamber. And then later the Mayor of Thatcher and I, Jenny Howard, met with CCAP in regards to some concerns they have with what they call the LIHEAP, which is a way of subsidizing or at least paying from time to time people's who qualify their utility bills and to keep them from being shut off. Following day, Dustin and I had a teleconference with a gentleman who wanted to bring in some housing, but his concept and his planning needs more time, and so we don't know if we'll hear from him again. But he was, I think, he wanted to base it on using other people's money, including ours, and so we just let him know that we need the housing, but don't have we're not ready to speculate and fund speculative housing. The following day, the 23rd, there was the pit count, and a pit count is point-in-time count to identify people who were either homeless or living in homes that don't have the utilities. And I was one of 5 or 6 teams that went out and spent time mostly in Pima. And the last year, I think that there were 45 that people who were identified as being homeless, and this year we don't have the final numbers, but it looks like we'll exceed that. It's not no badge of honor, but it's also not something that you want to sweep under the rug and say we don't have a problem. It's important for funding both for the tribe from Housing and Urban Development, and also for Arizona Department of Housing using those funds to get resources for us. So that was it was eye-opening to go knock on doors and keep your eye open for dogs coming around to get you. Following day, we had our legislative policy committee. All 3 of the supervisors will phone into these meetings, these updates. They give us briefings, experts, and people who know policy very well. They are in touch with the legislature every day. Then they give us an idea on bills which are beneficial and or have potential to either reduce our ability to legislate, administer, or add taxes to us. And so, to shift taxes and costs to us. So I applaud the whole board for making themselves available. That was a 2-hour call on a Friday morning when everyone was off. Following day, attended our good sheriff's mother's funeral, and as well as Rosemarie Larson. They were both important to our county, and just wanted to share our ongoing concern and appreciation and how important it is for those people to be recognized and their contributions. Following week, traveled to Phoenix for a legislative luncheon for Rural Transportation Advocacy Council. They have a legislative luncheon, and it's like half a block away from the House and the Senate, and so hard to turn down a free lunch. So we get usually a couple dozen legislators who will come over, and some who are curious and some who are absolutely committed to getting funding, and so that was a time well spent. Yeah, even though it was 7 hours on the road and pilot car through the canyon. No thanks. And then the Friends of the Library meeting on Wednesday, Mount Graham Regional Medical Center. I think all of us were in attendance to either the morning or afternoon meeting where we looked at their new, I think it's, did they say $70 million or $60 million? I don't remember. It's a considerable investment in a clinic, which is just about ready to, they're finishing drywall and starting to paint, and that will really improve the services and the accessibility to services and increase the ability for them to attract more specialists and physicians. Following that, Graham County Chamber of Commerce mixer, and then LPC legislative policy briefing. We have that every week, every Friday. And thank you for Chairman and Dustin for attending that. And you probably were on it remotely.
No, sir.
Oh, were you?
LPC, yeah.
Okay, gotcha. Okay. Well, that's my report.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. I won't bore you with going over the same things. I attended quite a few of the same things that John and Paul did. Now have a public hearing. Turn the time over to Manager Welker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. So the CDBG stands for Community Development Block Grant. This grant comes through CEGO, our local federal government arm, and some counties do this differently. Some of them do it competitively within their county every year, but for many, many years in Graham County, we just rotate it. So Safford, Thatcher, Pima, Graham County, we all get a shot at it every 4 years. It's a set amount, $290,000, $291,000 I think this year. And it can only be used for certain things. It is federal funds, so all the federal requirements come with it, which unfortunately doesn't make that money stretch nearly as far as we'd like it to. But we've had some really good projects with it in the past. We've been able to chip seal sections of roads throughout the county. We've used it for ADA compliance, which is what we used it for at the fairgrounds last year to put the rubber floor underneath our playground equipment. So it's mainly used for things that will benefit disadvantaged or disproportionate communities. So I'll just do that introduction, and Mr. Bill Osborne is with us here, William Osborne with CEGO, and he has a presentation for us to go forward with.
Thank you.
Good morning, and thank you, everybody, for attending. This is an initial public hearing, initial meeting regarding CDBG. We are required to hold these meetings and to document the participation in them as part of compliance with the CDBG program. So what is CDBG? Dustin's provided a good introduction. It's intended to help communities with housing, infrastructure, the living environment, and economic opportunities. It's also for allocating limited tax dollars to community and economic development needs through programs that are either divided regionally or competed for statewide. I'll go into a little more detail about that. And CDBG national criteria for funding eligibility, which, as Dustin also said, it's largely the focus is for disadvantaged populations, but there are some grant opportunities that actually benefit generally the whole community. And also just to sort of go over some of the past Graham County CDBG projects, but most importantly today is for getting involved, getting the tax dollars back for Graham County CDBG projects. We need to hear from you in the community what ideas for potential projects that the Board of Supervisors could consider at the following public hearings. Any projects that aren't addressed or brought forward today and put into the minutes, which are adopted, those projects can't be considered by the Board of Supervisors for a resolution of application. So projects need to be identified today, even if it's just an idea. Without those ideas, the following public hearings will have to consider those that are brought up today. So the CDBG funding.
Mr. Osborne, could I?
Yes.
When you say we have to identify them today, does that mean that they basically put together a brainstorm and put together a long list? Is today
Yes.
really the deadline?
It doesn't have to be.
Okay.
But the more public hearings you have, it's kind of like I think the idea generally is like getting a large bowl of spaghetti and getting the whole thing up on the wall as best you can think, like, these are the ingredients we want maybe to see, is that you kind of get those in the record. But we can talk more in detail about
That's
that.
fine. I just didn't want to feel like we're so constrained by a deadline that we act prematurely.
No, the main thing is if the Board of Supervisors is going to consider a resolution of application, that if a project hasn't been put in to the initial public hearings, and this may be one of more than one, that resolution can't be moved forward without a public hearing to include that item. If that makes sense. So it's basically, this is like the large box of toys from which a resolution to apply for up to 3 projects for the county, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but basically, if you haven't talked about that, and it doesn't even mean like, here's all the details. It's just simply, there's something that's really important about this park. There's something important about sidewalks in a certain area, or wastewater treatment in another area. That if those haven't been even discussed and put into the minutes, then those projects really have to basically be identified through another public hearing. So this is kind of the opportunity to just get that large box filled up with, like I said, as many ideas as possible. And so CDBG funding allocations, how much to who and for what? The state, Arizona Department of Housing gets approximately $10 million every year. ADOH, they have retention for their staff needs in their budgeting. They also have 1% that they set aside for technical assistance to local communities, of which we actually, as one of the councils of government, also draw in from that 1%. Like when we come out for meetings like this, or for other meetings to discuss with the communities what they would like to see, not only for CDBG projects, but things that could become CDBG projects, that 1% helps to provide funding for that. $1 million every year is set aside for Colonias CDBG grants in a set-aside account for communities that are defined as Colonias. There are not a lot of those, but our region, the Seagoes region, including Graham and Greenlee counties, actually has a number of them that other counties in the state don't have. $1.3 million set aside 15% state special projects allocation. And this is after ADOH's retention for their staffing needs and also for the Colonias. These are typically projects that are very competitive and not the same as what we're generally looking at here in this year for Graham County. $7.5 million approximately is set aside for regional account and for rural Arizona communities within the councils of government that have those. And those, we have these councils of government. We review CDBG applications even if they're not ones that we are actually processing in collaboration with the community. But typically we do. We do work with your communities to help them to obtain and administer grants. The councils of government provide that technical assistance. We also prep applications, as I was saying, and communicate and advocate for members with the Arizona Department of Housing. Through the executive boards, councils of government adopt methods of distribution, or MODs, for CDBG funding to maximize impact for each jurisdiction having its turn in a county's rotation. Like Dustin was saying, Graham County gets once every 4 years so that each community gets a buildup of funding that makes it more of a punch. Instead of a small amount like $60,000, it will be $290,000, something like that. And so we have 4 councils of government that receive these funds out of that $7 million or $7.5 million. We have this year about $1.34 million. Other councils of government have more or less. It's based on population and also poverty, shares of poverty. Oh, let's see here. And so getting into the types of CDBG funds that are available, not in this particular year, but there was last year and there will be next year, Colonias grants available. And these are competitive, but the Colonias are designated using objective criteria such as lack of potable water supply, lack of adequate sewage systems, and lack of decent, safe, and sanitary housing, and they had to have been in existence prior to November 28th of 1990. It doesn't mean that there aren't possibly other Colonias communities, they just haven't been designated, but if there are communities that have existed since prior to 1990 that have conditions such as, you know, the sewer systems are really in terrible shape, the housing is dilapidated and so forth, that those areas might be able to, with documentation, qualify as a Colonias. They generally have to be within 150 miles of the border with Mexico. And so these are biannual grants and they're up to $2 million available statewide for these communities that are, again, qualified as colonias. It is competitive, but only with other colonias communities in Arizona. And again, typically limited to water, wastewater, stormwater, or housing rehabilitation projects. These little blue dots on the map show you where the colonias communities are in Arizona. And you can see that they kind of go up into Graham County and also across the border into New Mexico. But we have, I think, the largest concentration of colonias in the country in Arizona and in our region particularly. So with we have 68 qualifying colonias in our area of service. The Seago region has 37 in total. Cochise County has 15 of these. Graham County has 10. Greenlee has 2, and Santa Cruz County has 10. These have to be shovel-ready projects with designs 100% completed for facilities or infrastructure. They have to be income qualified with a waiting list for housing rehab projects. And also there should be leverage or match funding in order to raise the score for that colonias to be selected for a colonias grant. And the environmental review has to be completed, again, ahead of award of the grant. The colonias communities in Graham and Greenlee counties, the town of Pima is classified as being a colonias or a colonia. And in unincorporated, there's Artesia, Bonita, Fort Grant, Bryce, Eden, Fort Thomas, Klondike on the other side of the mountains, Lone Star, Sanchez, San Jose, and Solomon. So those are the colonias communities that are in Graham County, and those could perhaps be suggested for improvements next year. The state special projects, as I mentioned, is a competitive grant. It's available each spring, so it's annual, but it is competitive with the whole state. And we would even be competing with Phoenix, with Tucson, pretty much everybody. We would be actually competing with the rural non-entitlement communities, so actually not with Tucson or Phoenix, but with communities in some of the counties that are around us. Department of Housing ranks applications by scoring criteria, again, shovel-ready projects with the planning, designing, engineering activities tied to future phase CDBG construction could be a state special projects grant application. So the idea that you have a bigger project that you'd like to try to acquire colonias funding for, or even have colonias and regional account funding for, a state special projects grant could help fund the design and planning work that goes into the front end of that. State special projects also get funding from lost funding from other past awarded CDBG projects that have basically gone into stasis. The folks stopped working on the projects. They had other priorities and they decided that they weren't going to comply with the grant. There's a clawback and the state takes that funding back and puts it into the state special projects pot. Regional account, which is where we're at here in Graham County and 3 other communities this year, is non-competitive funding. The amounts are awarded in annual cycles. The number of participating jurisdictions in the Council of Government like ours, and by agreements included in the method of distribution, which I introduced. We've got $1.34 million for communities in each of the next 3 years until 2027. The projects may include infrastructure, community facilities and parks, community, public and community services, up to a maximum of 30% of the grant amount, planning, design, engineering for future CDBG implementation, a maximum of 20% of the amount, slum and blight reduction, up to 15% of the maximum amount, and housing redevelopment and rehabilitation. Breaking it down, we have 1.34 million, about a little over 500,000 goes to Cochise County, which is our most populous county. Also the highest, I don't know that they're the highest in poverty though. We have almost 292,000 here for Graham County, 100,000 for the town of Clifton, and 440,000 for Santa Cruz County. And the communities in 2025 in the rotation is the town of Clifton, Graham County, Tombstone, and Santa Cruz County. And so those are the communities that I'll be working with and having similar public hearings with them to talk about the projects that they might want to see. The national objectives, which are the criteria for qualifying on applications, is that a project must primarily benefit low and moderate income persons, low mod. 51% of the service area beneficiaries would have income 80% or less of the median income for households of the same size in the area. And the service area would be defined by the project. And so if it's an infrastructure project that's kind of in a specific area, the folks in that area would have to meet that criteria. Special needs groups are automatically considered low and moderate income, such as seniors, disabled, domestic violence victims, rehabilitation, populations in need of rehab, homeless. Those are considered specific special needs populations, and they don't need to meet this qualification. Projects must prevent or eliminate slum or blight conditions is another criteria. That would be an area-wide consideration would be that 25% or more of the properties in an area are deteriorated or abandoned. And there's also spot blight or slum, which is rehabilitation of a specific condition detrimental to public health and safety. That would typically be associated with a natural disaster or with a fire or something like that, and it's a public facility. A project must meet urgent needs related to health and safety issues. That sort of hits that when you have like a natural disaster or you have a fire, that sort of thing might be a trigger for such a project to move forward. The eligible project categories and types, so this is to sort of help fuel your thoughts about what projects in our communities here in Graham County might qualify. There's street improvements, which can be roads, sidewalks, and ADA improvements. ADA is removal of barriers to access. Those are also, again, some of the improvements that actually might make it easier to actually qualify as when you're reducing barriers for folks who have access issues. Water and sewer systems, lines and stations, parks improvements, and community service facilities. With housing, there's housing rehabilitation, new construction by eligible organizations such as Habitat for Humanity or Grow America or some other community housing development organization. There's also activities that support new housing construction such as land acquisition, clearance, and street improvements, and home ownership assistance like down payment assistance or counseling. Public services such as childcare, job and vocational training, healthcare and substance abuse services, and crime prevention. There's also the planning and design and engineering. It's another category. Again, it's limited as to how much of your total amount that you can spend on these, but it could go towards comprehensive or general plan updates that, again, point the community's intention to go for certain sorts of improvements that CDBG can help support. So it's kind of like the first level is to plan, then to design, and then implement. There's also area-specific plans or strategic plans, engineering design plans for CDBG qualifying infrastructure projects, and architectural engineering plans for CDBG qualifying building projects. Past projects in Graham County, this is what I could find in our records, was the Aravapai Klondike Road right-of-way acquisition for street and drainage improvements. That goes back quite a few years, almost 15 years, I believe. And the county fairgrounds ADA accessibility and playground improvements that Dustin talked about. Those are some of the projects that Graham County has had, recognizing that you have the opportunity to have up to 3 projects in a county. Most towns and cities, they have to be limited to 1 construction project. But the funding amount is something that may be a constraint, though leverage funding for other sources might be able to make projects happen. And so the question is what projects would you like to see in Graham County? And getting a kind of like a list together, an ideas board, and as many of those things as possible that we can get out. we can have the Board of Supervisors look at in terms of having a resolution to apply. Some of the ideas that are brought forward may not be feasible. They may not even fit within CDBG, but it never hurts to ask, because if you don't ask, you can't say, hey, we'd like to actually now have this as part of a resolution. If it wasn't considered earlier, we had to go to another public hearing with notice and everything else. So sorry to be a downer on that part, but I just want everybody to be as creative as possible in thinking about CDBG. And also, I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have.
On your special projects list, you're talking about being shovel-ready. Does that mean they also have to be environmentally cleared?
The answer to that is, I believe so. Yeah, I mean, so if it's shovel-ready, it's something where we've already had the environmental review record completed, as we would normally do for a Colonias project also. So,
Okay.
yes.
And then this, as I understand from previous CDBG grants, SEGO takes care of a portion or a substantial portion of the paperwork, the reporting. Is that correct?
Yes, we are here to assist with both the preparation of applications. We, as needed to get authorizations from the county, we would contact the county to say, hey, we need some dated signatures on some documents. We kind of help provide staff capacity. And then once a grant is actually awarded, we help with the management of the contracts. And so it's like when the contract is awarded, we also work with the contractor or contractors to ensure that they're also compliant with the requirements of CDBG, which may change, but we'll also be working on that too. We work very closely with ADOH, and we make sure that we're not going outside the boundaries, and they let us know when we are, and we try to help bring things back together.
And last question on the ADOH funding. I know it's a pass-through from HUD, but do these jobs require Davis-Bacon wages, or are they exempt from Davis-Bacon since it's state money?
With regards to Davis-Bacon, if it's a federally funded project where construction is over $2,000, it requires Davis-Bacon wages at this point. That goes back like to 1934.
So the answer is yes, all these are going to be Davis-Bacon?
That's a great question where I say, well, we still are kind of in a wait and see because of more recent developments. But at this point in time, Davis-Bacon, both for labor standards and wages and for opportunities for employment, also what HUD calls Section 3, that's also kind of out there. Again, the idea is helping folks in the community who have need get connected with opportunities to work on such projects has been a goal, but that may change, but it has been up to this point
Very good. Well,
a requirement. We help with that too.
That's not a critical point, just a question.
Public comments? Supervisor Howard, did you have anything?
No, I've got some thoughts, but are we supposed to throw out our thoughts on projects at this time, or?
That would be fantastic. One of the other things is that I did ask if staff might prepare a sign-in sheet specifically for the CDBG P2. And just to make sure that it circulates and as many people are here who wish to speak to it. This actually could go to Dustin, and Dustin could scan it for me if everybody's had the opportunity.
Well, Mr. Chairman, and Mr. Osborne, I'm certain we're going to have, it's not that difficult for us to have another public hearing. We meet every 2 weeks and can include a public hearing. So that's not a problem. I don't know that we need to brainstorm today, but whatever the pleasure of the board is.
Yeah, well, we have some street projects that comes to mind. I don't have anything specific right now in my train of thoughts. There's a few, but I'd just soon wait and look them over a little better. I have other ideas. I thought of something like, this is just me thinking off the cuff real quick here, is there's like the walking paths on Ray Lane and down Golf Course Road, solar lighting possibly, something like that. That's a very dark area up there. It's used quite a bit. We have a park that we've discussed down at Central a little bit. We could maybe look at that as well. Also, I noticed on your presentation, you had a picture of the courthouse and some projects in there. There's projects we've discussed about the courthouse for improvements as well that's come to mind. What else? That's basically all I have on my thought right now.
Anybody from the public? Mr. Bryce?
Michael, would you mind coming to the microphone just so we can pick it up? Thank you.
So if we're just throwing stuff at the wall, I'm ready to throw.
Throw down.
So we've talked about improvements on 20th Avenue and Willie's Way, and possibly even a connection with 40th Street to the 191. We've got an issue on Clifton Street where there's a trouble with an intersection, maybe a roundabout. Fairgrounds parking, I don't know whether to qualify or not. And I don't know how water projects or different things like that fall into it. But you know, shoulders on Ray Lane Road, if we could, but that would be good to get some shoulders on that road. Like I say, I don't know about water projects because they're kind of outside the county, but I mean, they are looking at, I know Graham County Utilities looking about some improvements going across the river from Pima to supply more water, since they've got quite a bit of increase in population over there. The population might not support this type of grant, though. And as far as that goes, people out on Powerline Road, when I've been talking to them, they've been asking me if Safford Water's going to come out there. But we could figure out something on Slum and Blight, it'd be great too.
Thank you, Mr. Bryce. Anybody else? Mindy?
So out of pure selfishness, there's a subdivision out in Eden that is just blowing up. It's called Fred Webb, and there's over 50 1-acre parcels, maybe more. I have family that lives out there, and if that subdivision really does what they're talking about, it's going to be full before we know it. So that's going to put over 50 families going down Hot Springs Road. It is a really, really bad road. So that's my proposal.
That's great.
Your proposal is to chip seal, improve.
Mr. Bennett?
One idea where I notice a need, our exercise path has a lot of crossovers that represent potential hazards. Specifically on Ray Lane, about the bridge, we go from, the exercise path goes from one side to the other side of the road. There's also another one at 20th, just, I want to say a little further south of Golf Course Road. And then coming down Discovery Park, there are two, basically you have to cross over Discovery Park Road multiple times to stay on the exercise path. I know in other communities, they put in pedestrian crosswalks that include a stoplight. And obviously we don't need a two-way stoplight, but some sort of, at a minimum, warning or indicator that there are potential pedestrians and cyclists might be beneficial. I've seen, not only from making use of those exercise paths, but seeing other people on them, they get focused on their running or their cycling, and they just follow the path straight into the road. And I think if there was some warning, I would recommend an actual light that would stop in favor of pedestrians as a potential safety issue. It seems to be something that this might be appropriate use of those funds. So I'd make that recommendation.
Great, thank you. Anybody else? Trey?
I'm also going to be a little selfish. So I'll throw out a few. It'd be nice to be able to remove some of those railroad tie playgrounds, those playground sets, and put in something that kids won't get splinters on. It would be nice to, like was already mentioned, fill up some of our parks. I know that we got I don't know when we're going to be ready for it, but I know we've talked about filling in that lower pond. And that could definitely help us out there for filling that in and getting I think we talked about pickleball court on that spot right there. So that's just a couple off the top of my head, but I could get a very extensive list if we really want.
Thank you, Trey. Anybody else? Sheriff looks like he's got something stirring back there. Yeah.
I'm hearing bags of money.
Yeah. Manager Welker?
Mr. Chairman, we talked about this a little bit. I didn't know we were making such a specific list today, but that's fine. Michael mentioned 20th Avenue, Willie's Way, 40th Street. We like that area because the right-of-way is already there, and we wouldn't have to purchase it. With CDBG, because it's federal funds, we'd be required to do an official appraisal and pay for those. So if we do a street project, my recommendation would be to do it in a place we already have right-of-way, where we're not spending those funds on right-of-way and just only on the actual street material. Anyway, I just wanted to add to that list 43rd Street, which is perpendicular to 20th Avenue. I think we did 47th last year, 45th's done, so 43rd would kind of finish that area. But all that area behind Joby's, we do have a lot of right-of-way that are just dirt roads. They're ours, have been ours for decades, so it'd be nice to get those chip sealed.
And I have a short list that I'll propose at another meeting. I've got a little more homework to do to see what would and wouldn't qualify as far as the locations.
All right. Anything else? Mr. Osborne, we appreciate you coming and appreciate what you do for our whole community and across the state. You guys do a great service for us. Thank you.
You're most welcome. Contact information is here. One of the things I think that we could do, again, prior to having another public hearing, is for those of you who want to put your thinking caps on, is that you could contact probably both Dustin and myself to provide your list of ideas. And that way, we've covered the opportunity in this public hearing. But if there are folks who want to submit in writing kind of their testimony, I think that could be acceptable. Because there are a number of ideas here. Many of them are excellent ideas to give us a starter. But if others have other ideas, we can get those in writing and then maybe even publish those prior to the next public hearing, just so that those could be in the list of, hey, here are some things that were considered. And for people to have some time to think about those before that next public hearing. And then the Board of Supervisors could also be thinking about what seems to make the most sense.
Great. Thank you.
Chairman, I just had one last question. Can you give us a timeline? What are our deadlines as far as the getting the proposal approved and moving forward?
Typically, we have a resolution to apply by April 1st. We might be a bit behind schedule on that, and from my own experience, that's not generally a problem. But applications are usually due in August, which is, application will actually have the thought behind, hey, here's what a budget for a project would be for whether it's design and construction, that here are some numbers. And again, they're kind of ballpark numbers. They don't have to be exact, but they generally, you want them to add up to the 291 and change that's available to Graham County, or for a number of applications that all those, when combined, add up to that number. Identifying leverage opportunities, other projects that may already be kind of in the thought process that these grant funds might be able to support is something else to consider. But again, that would be probably your, for your next public hearing, or for what's called the P4, where you're adopting a resolution to apply, that's kind of been thought out. But in the meantime, before a scheduling of that public hearing would be to publish, here's the list of projects that we're thinking about. Here's some other, and again, getting it in writing to both Dustin and myself would be extremely helpful. So that way, when we go to publish the notice for the next public hearing, we'd have that full list.
And then does the county or does SEGO do the scoping and the preliminary, or at least the scoping letter?
There's probably a bit of both, because we would probably go through and see, like, are these projects that actually could use CDBG funds? And one of the challenges, and I should say this, one of the challenges that most all the communities that SEGO works with is because the American Community Survey, which is between censuses, there's surveying of information for how much a household makes, that the numbers for almost all of our communities have made it so that there are no longer automatic qualifications for towns, for even block groups within towns that used to be 51% plus low mod. As we're saying, we're more than 51% of the people in that area make 80% or less of what the area median income is. So let's say that's $70,000, somebody's making 80% or less of that, over 51% of that part of the community. Well, that's no longer the case. Most all of our communities are well below 51% for low mod. And so then it really does become a question of, hey, for the service area on this project, how do we define that? And then how many beneficiaries would you say technically fit that, and then do a survey of those individual households? You'd actually have to do some door knocking, which the neighbors in Thatcher just completed a low moderate income special survey for an improvement project for High School Avenue, I believe. To have ADA improvements as well, to get kids to school from their neighborhoods, they had to do a survey. It wasn't any longer just a, hey, here's your automatic funding. Another possibility, owner-occupied housing rehabilitation. It's something that a couple of our communities, including Duncan in Greenlee County and Patagonia and Santa Cruz County, are going to be making application for. Actually, Duncan has been awarded. We're going to be working with them, trying to identify a number of households that may benefit from some assistance. But those households automatically will be self-qualifying. They're the ones who will have to say, hey, I'd like to take part in this program. Okay, you'll have to show that you make 80% or less of the area median income, and also that you don't have $1 million in assets just sitting around, that you basically have need. Your home has need, that it's either code issues, the roof is leaking, the air conditioning unit is not working, plumbing is bad, things like that, that those folks can get help. And we just recently got guidance from the Department of Housing, ADOH, that they're no longer prohibiting owner-occupied housing rehab grant funding and participation in areas that are designated in FEMA floodplains. And so where you're not increasing the size of a home, you're just fixing it up. That money will be available also to those folks, unless, again, they're looking to expand the size of their footprint of the house. That may be a challenge or a problem. But otherwise, folks will be able to access funding that I've been told they haven't been able to for 15, 20 years.
Okay.
So that's good news.
Well, thank you very much.
You're
Appreciate
welcome.
your travel today.
Yeah, thank you.
Manager Welker?
Mr. Chairman, just one question of clarification. Mr. Osborne, when we do that resolution, that will be the resolution that identifies, assuming we just do one project, the one project we do, right? It's not a list
Yes.
of more options. It's the
Right.
board is adopting this project.
What I have as a precaution, because of the participation timeframe, is what I'm recommending that communities do is that they go ahead and choose a construction project that, you know, this is the one that seems like it will pencil out. Recognizing that a low moderate income special survey may need to be done. If that fails, if the survey responses are such, or people don't, you know, open the doors, people don't respond, people say, I don't want anybody knowing what my income is, and things like this, which is, it's a difficult issue, but some of our communities face this. And it's like, this is tax money that could be coming back to your community to fix things up. Not responding to the survey is going, if they don't, could be a problem. And then you're looking at, well, what do we do now? We have to pick another project, another service area, things like that. I'm recommending that here's the project that we would like to do, and or owner-occupied housing rehabilitation, for instance, where that's hey, this is something where we could have this money available, that the people who would participate have to do the application. They're the ones who have to become clients and choose to do so. So, I mean, it's like, that's probably the path that I would suggest, is to have or owner-occupied housing rehab, but looking at that construction project that maybe have a bigger impact for an area to do that.
All right. If nobody else has anything, we'll close the public hearing and our meeting will be adjourned.
Oh, call the public.
Okay. Anyone? Okay. Thank you. This meeting's adjourned.
Just ask for a call for the public real quick.
Is there a call to the public?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.